Good day, FAnews readers and viewers and listeners. Today I'm speaking once again to Andre Symes from Genasys Technologies, one of my favorite interviews and conversations. We will be doing a series of interviews on various industry issues and topics relevant to both our markets. Welcome, Andre.
Thanks, Renette, for having me again.
I thought it might be a good idea to start with a topic close to my heart and close to your business, and that is brokers. Very specifically, the smaller broker and the challenges they have in the market out there. So, my first question is, brokers are an extremely important part of your business, and I am keen to know, is there something as too small when it comes to who you deal with and the type of a technology that you can assist brokers with? Because you get the small broker and then you get obviously the big one. Is there something as too small?
That's a great question, and I suppose that's probably more a question for the broker themselves to find out, to do the actual business case for when does a policy administration system start making sense for them. But in the general sense, absolutely, the majority of the independent brokers, the small ones that are out in the regions that we've spoken to, are not too small to use a policy admin system. I mean, we have people on platforms. We've got scores of brokers that use our system, and they range from 1 or 2 million rand a year in turnover all the way close to $1 billion in GWP. And it's the same kind of technology that underpins the processing for all of them. So I think technology-wise, you can never be too small to use it. It's just, when does it start making sense for you financially to do that? And I would say that it probably sits around about the $1 million, 2 million rand a year turnover GWP mark. Start thinking about how you can automate it at that stage already.
Okay, yeah, so it can be fairly small. Perception is reality often. Do brokers get nervous about the discussions around what it's going to cost them to run a better business using your system? Tell us about the conversations you have with brokers and what really bothers them.
Well, it's always money. And unfortunately, in the broker space, margins are tight. There's lots of competition. Margins have always been tight. And especially these days, with the new regulations coming down and putting additional pressure on brokers, RDR is on the back of everybody's minds. It is, it's on its way, and it's going to affect us quite heavily. And these things are all going to impact what people can pay for IT systems. There's also the question about, where does these costs sit? We have different types of brokers. You've got the fully independent brokers, we've got mandated bound brokers, and then where do those fees sit? I think also, where does the responsibility sit with the carriers to provide some sort of platform for this? We heard very nicely from Andrew Coots at a conference yesterday about how much money they've spent creating a platform for their brokers. But again, that's only one product provider. We need to find a way that we can get multiple products onto the broker platforms for that. But, the conversation then pivots quite quickly to, yes, it does cost money to put an IT platform in place, but that redeployment of capital into technology can create so many good efficiencies for the business that it starts making sense. So if you actually start doing your TCO, your total cost of ownership for an IT system, but you don't just look at it in an IT siloed mechanism, but if I spend this money, how much more work can I do? How many more policies can I write? And then also, very importantly, what kind of time does it free up on my side as a broker for me to spend more time with my client, giving them more and better advice, which is ultimately what we want to do.
Yes, that's ultimately what it's about. As a company, you deal with many brokers and brokerages. Do you see, it's a little bit off the topic, but maybe still relevant, do you see some young blood coming into the broker space? We've always heard that the average age of brokers are 55 years old, which links to battling to get used to technology, and that's why I think my question is relevant. Do you see a different picture?
Yes and no, and I know that's always a terrible answer. Yeah. The challenge is the broker landscape and also the relationship. I remember once going down to Bloemfontein to meet a broker to talk about some IT solutions for them. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I got up at like 4 to drive to Bloem, or even earlier, and I got there just after 8. And he was an old chap, must have been about 60. And then when he asked me whether I want milk in my coffee, he ended up pouring Captain Morgan in there instead. And that's how a lot of these regional brokers work. It's very old school. And a lot of the relationships that they have are decades old. So, so for a youngster to just come in and to step into that relationship, they don't know how it works, especially in that agri space as an example. You don't know their business as well as the people that have been looking after them for decades effectively. However, what is quite exciting, and it's one of the good things from the InsurTech hashtag space, and I use inverted commas because I always give the InsurTechs a hard time. But the technology in the InsurTech space, the attraction of these new fancy brands, we always talk about Lemonade, etc. But someone like WeFox, which is a very, very powerful, very large digital brokerage, does attract some new young talent into our industry. And it's just a matter of time before there's a natural organic osmosis into the traditional, more regional broker space. So yes, I think that we are seeing it. We're seeing it much more on the insurance side. I'm waiting for it to spill over to the broker space because you know what? Broking is cool. As a matter of fact, and I'm no longer a youngster, but I am 20 years under the average age of the brokerage. If I wasn't in tech right now, I would use my own tech to be a broker, to be honest.
Yes, I think there's a lot of opportunities in the broker space. I've attended conferences and I've really started seeing the young blood coming through, but the conversation still lends a lot to the fact that the broker is older. So that's why I specifically wanted to get your views on it. What is the biggest and most incorrect or wrong perceptions out there about the whole journey around getting your business tech ready?
That is correct. So there's two. Firstly, that it's expensive and it's quite a lot of time and effort, and that it creates redundancies. I think a lot of people are scared of automation because there's this perception of redundancies around that. But when you actually unpack it, it isn't. No one really gets made redundant because of tech. They get redeployed into different areas. And I think particularly in the small broker, they're too small to even consider resizing of organizations. The larger brokers obviously think about how do they resize, how do they launch new verticals, etc. But it should be more focused about how much more business I can do. So I think there's a false perception about automation creating redundancy. And then there's always a conversation about the actual effort to get it done. Cost has always been a big problem, but that is changing very quickly. 10 years ago, cloud didn't exist. Last mile connectivity, and what I mean by that is that a broker out in Senin doesn't have fiber to connect to an online broker platform. That's all changed. We all have 4G now. 4G is relatively inexpensive. It's the data needed that you need to use to manage your business is much smaller than running a YouTube video. So, to run your business is not that expensive. And because we now have these centrally hosted shared software as a service platforms, like the Skyhost platform, it really drives down the IT costs. So now it starts making sense. It's just about probably getting the people to revisit that or explore that again.
And what's the profile of the person that's really, I know I'm hovering on about that, but we get the, at FAnews we've got the CPD platform, and we find that the older brokers really sometimes battle with that basic technology. So my question revolves around a lot around the age and the acceptance of the technology. But surely you get the older broker that's quite cool with technology and do accept it easy and bring it into their business easy. But do you find that the older guys still, you have to talk to them quite a few times and help them a lot along the way to get the process seamless?
I think that was the case, but the COVID situation has really helped speed up the adoption of digital technology. I mean, even my 82-year-old Omo who sits in Bella Bella is now a Zoom expert. So I think COVID has really pushed us online, and it is no different to using your Facebook account than it is to using an online policy admin system. So it really shouldn't be that difficult. And yes, COVID has got so much negative impacts on us, but the one upside is that it's pushed us all online. And therefore made the world a slightly smaller place.
Absolutely true, and fast-track that process immensely. So another question is, once a broker have sort of settled and are comfortable with your or a policy admin system, do they sort of stick, or is it a fairly easy move to say, you know what, I'm not happy, I'm going to move? Do they stick, or do they move easy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the really nice traits about the existing, so it's again this whole youngster versus the more traditional broker thing. Brokers are fiercely loyal people, or the
Yeah,
ones that I know at least. And it's a really nice trait that they've got. And I found that if you treat them well and you treat their business like your own, they'll be fiercely loyal to you. But if you do something wrong and you don't treat them right, they are going to look somewhere else. And at the moment, there's so many competition, there's so much competition in broker platform online space out there that it really has to keep the providers on their toes, because brokers can switch if they want to. And that really does mean that us as providers and the whole industry as providers, we need to make sure that we look after those brokers. But what, you look after a broker, they're going to look after you.
yes, absolutely. Loyalty, it goes both ways. Um, I always enjoy the whole technology conversation, and I think COVID has really, when I wrote my editorial for the August edition, that was definitely one of the things that I've mentioned, is how it fast tracked a lot of things. Can you run a business without, just a random question, you can't really run a business these days without your technology system. So every single broker has a technology um, partner. Yes?
Well, I think that there's a lot of them that run potentially without an actual policy admin platform. Look, Excel is quite a powerful tool, and if you've only got a couple of hundred policies, you can probably manage something in there. The challenge is, though, is that there is technology somewhere. With regulation, dictating that that the carriers need to see their data. We need to understand where the data sits. Looking after the customer, handling complaints. All of those things need technology behind it. So you can still manage your actual policy on a piece of paper if you want to, but the insurers aren't going to take it. You can't go and dump a wheelbarrow full of policy schedules on their doorstep every year. You need to figure out how you do that. And the nice thing with ready-made policy admin systems is that it takes all of that headache away. You can just focus on running your business, selling more policies, giving your client more advice, and then all of your board drawing happens on its own. And all the data gets to the clients as and when they need to.
Yeah, I assume that's part of the compliance process also. If you don't have that, your compliance process also is so much more difficult.
Yeah. And we know that compliance is becoming more digital
Yeah.
over and over. I'm sitting probably about 2 miles from Lloyd's of London, which is notorious for being a paper-based system. And
Yes.
they are completely digitizing now. I mean, obviously, with Lloyd's being closed down for several months, they had to be digital. So, everybody's moving away and pushing technology in to try and optimize data sharing between organizations.
Which makes your role so much more critical and important. And it's fantastic to be in a technology business, I suppose. We always have to top it up with why Genasys.
Oh, really? Well, I didn't want to punt Genesis today, but
But
Genesis
you
is
can.
around. We understand the brokers, and we really are there to help the brokers. We want to give them a service that makes their business better. So effectively, I think all I can say about Genesis is, well, come and have a chat. If you're a brokerage that is struggling with your existing provider, or you're looking to digitize your existing business, give us a call. We've got big teams out in Johannesburg and Cape Town who would love to help you out.
And you are all about the client. So that I have seen about Genasys.
Absolutely.
Anything
Clients must.
else? Anything else for our readers, the brokers, you want to say, big or small? Your last comment.
Well, no. I think usually I just try and reassure the brokers that things are okay. The broker friends that I've got are perpetually worried about the future and worried about regulation and worried about RDR, etc. They're worried about COVID. But as I said in our previous interview, is that they are resilient. They always find a way. It's just about staying positive. Things will get better, and hopefully Genesis can be part of your getting better journey.
Yes, I'm sure. Thank you, Andre. Thanks for once again sitting on top of your building in London, talking to me today. It was great chatting to you again, and we'll speak soon.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Renette. I love chatting to you.
Thank you.